All right. Welcome to the Financial Fireside Chat session or webinar, Student Loan Repayment. Thanks everybody for being here this evening and taking some time to view this webinar. This is a really important topic for a lot of people. Over the past few years, student loan repayment has had a bit of an overhaul. And then in the past few months, there's been a little bit of a setback in terms of the entire process. I'm hoping that I'm able to answer some questions about the different types of repayment plans and some things that are happening in the Department of Education over the past few months, just for updates. I also have a really good resource and website that I'm going to share with you that keeps everyone updated on the most current things that are happening with student loans and repayments. So to get started this evening, the things I'm going to cover tonight are just some common terms related to student loan repayment. I'm going to talk about different types of loans, repayment plans, student loan servicers, and then kind of within that, I'll talk about consolidation and what to do if loans are in default, and a few other issues. And then we'll just wrap things up with some tips for managing those student loan payments. And then I'll end with some resources and references for you. But before we get into the common terms as a little bit of an introduction, I just want to talk about just some issues that borrowers are dealing with right now. And this is, I mean, everybody really had a little bit of a break during COVID with all loans going into deferment and the pause on interest rates for those federal loans. And so that was really able to help. In some cases, if people continue to make those payments, it was like essentially no interest loans at that point in time. They would able to get a little bit ahead on and reducing the balance of those loans. And then for people who really were just struggling to make ends meet, they didn't need to make any payments on those student loans. Last year, I did the same type of same topic presentation, and there were, thousands of new student loan borrowers that were starting the repayment process. Many more than had been previously because of that pause and those deferments on those loans. And as they started that process of making those student loan payments, there were a lot of things that were happening at the federal level in an attempt to really help out those borrowers. And there was a lot of confusion about what to do and how to do it. And so as I go through this information today, I'm hopefully going to be able to address a lot of those. But some issues that are happening with borrowers at this point in time is that the forgiveness, cancellation, or discharge applications. Um, they're not just having some, not knowing for sure how to fill those out, where that information is. So just being able to identify the information and the documents they need for that process. And then needing to be able to really find and follow those step-by-step instructions and help and just to be able to fill out those applications. In some cases, if you had applied for an income repayment plan, IDR, income driven repayment plan. If you tried to apply a few months ago and even tried to consolidate a few months ago, those applications were not available on the studentaid.gov website. At the end of March, they did become available. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about maybe some things to be aware of if those are decisions that you're going to make about that. Some other issues is the repayment plan enrollment and just making a decision about which is the right repayment plan for your situation. In terms of consolidating loans, there are pros and cons to consolidating and making sure that the borrower is selecting the right option and consolidating the right types of loans. Getting out of default and possibly stopping collections if it's been difficult to make payments and to start the process or continue the process on paying that debt. And then filing complaints. It's been because of a change in the, sorry, let somebody in here. Because of the reduction in staff um, at the student aid offices and the loan servicers offices. Um, I know a year ago when I did this webinar, I talked about kind of some issues with that. And just it was difficult to get help. People would get on the phone and just be on hold for hours and trying to get some questions answered. And so I think that process has streamlined a little bit, but even just knowing like where to go and what to do. So some things that are going on right now, that there is a lot of news or a lot in the news about student loans from the Department of Education and how President Trump is planning to change any relief programs for borrowers. It's a chaotic time to be working on student loan issues. Borrowers are more confused and concerned. And it's really more important than ever to stay updated on any changes about what's happening with the student loan system. So if you are a borrower yourself and you are working on making payments, if you are working with students or individuals who one of their issues is the student loan debt that they might have, or if you are, working on campus and working with students who might be starting that student loan process. There's a lot of uncertainty. It's hard to know what questions to ask for those borrowers, and even to know really where to start. But it's important to know and to let individuals know that there are resources to help address some of these complexities, and I'll talk about really where's the best place to be able to go. So as we get into some terms associated with the repayment process, the repayment plans is the first thing, and there are a number of different types of repayment plans. There's the traditional plan, and then there's income-driven plans. But a repayment plan is really that agreement to pay a fixed amount for 10 to 30 years for those educational loans. Income-driven payment plans are based on monthly student loan payment amount, or it's based on the monthly payment, sorry, is based on your income and your family size. And so in some cases with those income-driven plans, individuals' required payment could be $0. And that may seem confusing, like how can I make progress on paying down a loan if I'm not making any payments? And I'll get into that a little bit later. The loan servicers are the company assigned to handle the billing and other services on federal student loans. So student loans are issued from the Department of Education. Once those loans are dispersed, used for that college education, and when an individual, the borrower, starts to pay back that loan, the loan servicers are handling that. So payments go to the loan servicers, and then they're working with the Department of Education to be able to reduce that loan balance. Public service loan forgiveness is a type of forgiveness program where forgiveness of the remaining balance due on eligible federal student loans is based on employment in public service jobs. And so this is a real benefit for individuals. And with that forgiveness plan, there's very specific requirements. Individuals need to be working for a nonprofit or a state agency. So teachers are a really good example of individuals who can take advantage of the public service loan forgiveness. Um, you need to, sign up for the program before you start it, and then kind of track your progress. Um, for those forgiveness programs, you're placed into an income-driven repayment plan, and then after the 10 years of service, or that 120 payments, then the remainder of that loan is forgiven. Interest is the amount a lender charges a borrower, and it's a percentage of the principal. That's just standard on any type of a loan. The grace period is the period between the billing cycle and the date that the payment is due. So for college graduates, for federal student loans, the grace period is usually 6 months. So if a student graduates in May, November is usually when that grace period is up and when they have to start making those payments. Consolidation is combining one or more federal education loans into a new direct consolidation loans. And I'll talk more about consolidation, but this is an option that individuals, it can really help manage debt. And when individuals are reviewing their loans, they'll want to see, kind of make sure that they see the type of loan dispersed each year. And there may be different interest rates for each loan. So if, for example, we have a college student who goes to a public university, gets federal student loans for each semester or each year that they're in college, on their they're going to end up, even if they have always received federal student loans, maybe the same type of federal student loan, they could have up to 8 different loans listed that they're going to have 4 to 8 make that they're going to make payments on, because every time a loan is dispersed, it's considered a new loan, and each year the interest rate might be different for each of those loans. So consolidation, then if you take all of those federal student loans, consolidate them into one, it averages out that interest rate. So if you have some loans that have maybe a 7 or 8% interest rate and some that have a 3 or 4%, then they're going to average that out, and that's going to save the borrower money in the long run, because they'll have less interest that they'll have to deal with. For the public service loan forgiveness, this is something, as I mentioned, you do have to apply, and you also have to recertify every year with that type of a program. Because you could be in a public position or working for somebody in a public service job. Maybe you're in it for 5 years and then you go to the private sector, but then maybe you come back, and then you can always add those years together if you're still working on those loan payments. All right, so for the types of loans, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about federal loans, and these are loans that are dispersed from the Department of Education. But there's also private loans, and the majority of student loans are federal loans. About 92% of the loans used for school are federal, and so then only about 7 or 8% are private loans. The federal loans are issued or backed by the federal government, and the private loans are issued by a bank, a school, or other commercial lender. Some borrowers have a combination of federal student loans and private loans. And some people with student loans may have never been in college. They could be parent borrowers or even co-signers. So federal loans do provide more flexible options and protections for borrowers, which include like the income-driven repayment plans and the loan forgiveness programs. Um, the the private loans have less kind of flexibility with that. And one of the things that I'm going to repeat over more than once is that when you're thinking about consolidation, if you or someone have both federal loans and private loans, you never want to consolidate those together, because they become a private loan. You can't make private loans federal loans. If you do that, then you lose some of those benefits of the income-driven repayment plans or those loan forgiveness programs. So that's something that's really important to remember. If you consolidate, you want to keep the federal loans together and then the private loans together. So as I said, federal loans is money borrowed from the federal government. The types are direct subsidized loans, direct unsubsidized loans, direct plus loans, and direct consolidation loans. The subsidized loans are, what that subsidized mean is that while the borrower is in school, the Department of Education subsidizes the cost of the interest. So no interest accrues on the direct subsidized loan while the borrower is in school. For the unsubsidized, then that's the opposite, where interest does accrue on that loan while that student is in school. So a good example during COVID for those unsubsidized loans, the interest did not accrue on that for that time period. So that helped to save those borrowers a little bit of money. But typically, the interest is accruing on those loans. And for the unsubsidized loan, the borrower does receive a quarterly statement letting them know how much interest has accrued. They are able to make payments and pay off that interest during that time while they're in school. Um, I don't know how many people take advantage of that. But if it's not paid off, it just gets rolled into the principal of the loan. So that means their loan is a little higher than what they actually borrowed when they're done with school. A direct plus loan is for parent borrowers. These are the parent takes out the loan for their child or their dependent's education. And so these loans are, owned by the parent, and they have followed those same rules with grace period. There's unsubsidized, so the interest does accrue, and then once the student or the person that's in school that has used these funds, then the loan payment starts again. And the direct consolidation loan is when you consolidate your direct loans or those federal loans together. And as I've already mentioned, the private loans are borrowed from private organizations. Let's see. All right, if any time anybody has any questions, just go ahead and put those in the chat. I may not get to them till the end, but if you're thinking about them and want to put some and type it up, that's perfectly fine. So for repayment plans, there's two different types. We have the traditional payment or the standard repayment plan. And everyone is automatically enrolled in this plan. And now keep in mind, I'm talking about federal loans at this point in time. So everyone's automatically enrolled. The payment is 10-year fixed payments. So 120 payments over the life of the loan. Every payment is the same. And this does usually have higher monthly payments, but they're going to pay the least amount of interest over time. So, a student may graduate and the traditional payment plan is for their loan is maybe $800. And if they're able to make those payments, they're going to make that $800 payment for 10 years, and they'll pay off the loan that's going to cost them the least amount. We could always make more payments or higher payments on those student loans, but that's your standard plan. And then the other types are the income-driven repayment plans. And so there's different types of plans. There's a save plan, a pay repayment plan, so that's a pay as you earn, an income-based, and then an income contingency repayment plan. So I'm going to go over those in a little bit more detail here. So these are the fixed payment plans. I already talked about the standard plan. All of the federal loans are eligible for this type of payment plan. The graduated payment plans, same type of eligibility, but the way this one works is their payment is lower at first, and then it gradually increases about every 2 years. So the payment amounts are designed to ensure that your loans are paid off in 10 years. But it starts out with that smaller loan payment, which might be more manageable for those new professionals who maybe are, just getting started in their profession and earning those funds. And then it'll get paid off within 10 to 30 years. The extended is they need to have, more than $30,000 in direct loans. The payments can be fixed or graduated, but the term is going to be 25 years with that type. So with the standard loan, you're automatically put into that. With those other two, you do need to apply, essentially, and get approved for those types of plans. For the income-driven repayment plans, these are probably what's been in the news the most over the past couple of years. The SAVE plan is the newest type of income-driven repayment plan. I'm going to talk about it, but I do want you all to know that this plan is on hold, and there's litigation being done over this plan. This was a plan that President Biden put into place, and there was, not everybody liked the plan, so they decided to, take it to the courts. And so no decisions have been made on this plan. What the SAVE plan is, 10%, like the monthly payment amount is based on 10% of discretionary income. So discretionary income is kind of what's left over after all of your basic expenses, and those expenses that have to get paid are taken care of. So you just have to, provide that information. It's also going to be based on your income and your family size. So the SAVE plan is probably going to be the most affordable for everyone. But as I said, it's if you're not in the SAVE plan, you currently can't select that. For individuals who are currently in the SAVE plan, because there's litigation being done about this plan, they are in forbearance at this point in time, which means they're not making any payments on that plan. And they can opt to apply to go to a different income-driven repayment plan. And as I mentioned when we first got started, the for a while, no one could apply for the income-driven repayment plans. The link was not available on the student.gov website. It is now available, so you can switch. There's kind of some issues with the SAVE plan. Because it's currently in forbearance, it isn't being, like, the payments or the months are not being calculated in terms of the 10-year time period or the 15-year time period for when the balance is then forgiven. I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but so the income-driven repayment plans is you make those payments based on your income. And they're going to be lower than what the traditional plan is, but they're going to be manageable for you. And with each of those plans, you have like a certain time period or this term. And the term is usually going to be 15 to 20 years. After that 15 to 20 years, if there is a balance remaining on that loan, it is forgiven. So with the SAVE plan being in forbearance right now, nothing is getting kind of calculated or counted towards that 15 to 20-year time period. So it's really putting those individuals kind of in a tough spot at this time. So, but the SAVE plan kind of is the best option if it actually comes into play. With the pay plan or pay as you earn, this is for new borrowers since 2007, and so I'm not worried. I'm guessing most people are in that situation. And this is also 10% of the discretionary income, but never more than what you could pay under the 10-year standard repayment plan. So you're going to pay a little bit more each month for this, probably work towards paying off that loan a little bit faster, but it is based on your income. The, see the IBR, I just forget what these are called here. Income-based repayment plan kind of works that same way, with all those direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans, the any plus loans that are made to students. So plus loans are made to graduate students, and so those can be included in a part of that. The With this plan, it's either 10 or 15% of your discretionary income, but no more than what you could pay with a standard repayment plan. And then the income contingent repayment plan is also, it's a little bit more. So it's the amount you would pay, like about 20% of your discretionary income. So all of these are based on your income and your family size. You do need to report annually, if like your income, so your payment may change. And it's important that borrowers do that annual kind of check-in or report, in order for them to comply with all the requirements for the income-driven repayment plan. So really with these types of plans, you're making a commitment to pay off that loan, but it's over a long period of time, so that might seem overwhelming. You can always pay off loans early. You can always pay more than what is required. It's, all up to the borrower, but these types of plans really help people, with their budget, and then with their cash flow, and being able to manage, all of their different types of expenses. But as I said, these are the types of loans that are kind of in question right now. So the borrowers need to really pay attention to what loans they have, and what the requirements are, and then what reporting they need to do with that too. Right. So the student loan servicers, these are kind of your standard student loan servicers. And as I mentioned, they're the organizations that collect the payments on behalf of the lender, which is the Department of Education. They are available to answer borrowers' questions and to provide any help that's needed. There's loan servicers for both federal and private loans. These that I have listed here are for the federal loans. And then there's other types of servicers for private loans. Um, the student loan, as I said, the student loan servicers are going to be able to answer your specific questions. They're the ones where, you set up those automatic payments, you can track what the balance of your loan is, and those types of things. And for some individual, it gets confusing because, in order to kind of set up your payment plans, you need to go through the studentaid.gov website or the federal student loan website. But then once that's set into place, then you're going to get the information or contacting from the student loan servicers. Um, Borrowers could have multiple loan servicers depending on when they applied for the loans, when they borrowed, and that type of thing. It is possible to consolidate your loans so you have one servicer. That is ideal, because then you only have to track one place where you have to make sure that you are making your monthly payments. All right, so I've mentioned forbearance and deferment already with a couple of different scenarios. Deferments and forbearance are in place when borrowers are truly not able to make any payments on their student loans, whether they're on a traditional plan or an income-driven replan. If the borrower is in need of repayment and needs to pause their student loan payments, they can ask the loan servicer for a temporary deferment or forbearance. There's usually an option for that on the loan servicer's website. In many cases, interest will continue to accrue, even while the payments are paused. And this is going to add to the principal. So it's possible if you defer or in a forbearance for a year, your payment might be higher at the end of that time period, because of that interest that has accrued on your balance. During deferment, subsidized loans are not charged any interest, but the unsubsidized are. And if you've consolidated, then there will be that interest is accruing. For some, but not all forbearances and deferments count toward the cancellations under the income-driven replan or the public service loan forgivenesses. I've talked about this a little bit. So you have to, um, really check into that. So because of pending litigation, if you're in the save repayment plan and you're in forbearance, the time is not counted towards that, kind of that time period or that term that you need, in order to have that forgiveness at the end or the cancellation of the loan, at the end. So just your loan servicer website is going to have that information for you, along with the studentaid.gov, about what your situation is and what's happening with those loans. A borrower should always consider all of the potential consequences before they ask for a deferment or forbearance, and should try to limit the time that they spend in deferment and forbearance. It's better to request either a deferment or a forbearance rather than to just default, because there's kind of more serious financial consequences when someone defaults. Um, but these are definitely options. There are limitations on the number of times that you can request a deferment or a forbearance, and all of that information is on the website. And private student loans also have these options, but the requirements are going to vary depending on who the loan is with. When consolidating federal loan, I'm going to talk about kind of what would be some good reasons for doing that. It can help simplify your repayment process. As I mentioned, you could have a loan for every semester that you've been in school, or if you received a direct loan, a subsidized loan, and an unsubsidized loan, those are two separate loans. And so once you have finished your 4 years of college, it's possible when you look at your list of loans, there's a lot there with different balances and different interest rates. So if you are in, traditional repayment plan, you make like one payment, and that payment will get split up between all of those different loans. But if there's different interest rates, then it's still, not as much as going to go to the principal of a loan that has a higher interest rate than the other. So consolidating those really helps to simplify repayment, and that is, up to the borrower. You can access a better repayment plan if you've consolidated them for those income-driven repayment plans. They're all, you have to be careful though that you've only consolidated those direct loans that you have. Parent plus loans are not eligible for income-driven repayment plans. Unless they are consolidated. But you have to be really careful with that in terms of that consolidation. If you'd have to consolidate it with the students' loans, and that gets a little tricky. And so you want to make sure that the loans that you're consolidating that parent plus loan to is that it's going into, so it's listed as an actual direct loan, and that there's nothing different in there, because you could lose some of those benefits of the direct loan. Um, if you are consolidating, may help a borrower if they have an FFEL loan or a Perkins loan. and you're pursuing some different kind of cancellation or forgiveness programs. And it also can help if you need to get out of default. Consolidation is one path out of default because then it helps to lump everything together. You can apply for consolidate the federal student loans through the studentaid.gov website. And the application is currently open. It had been closed previously, but it is available for you to consolidate at this point in time. Some things that you want to consider when you're consolidating. You want to be very strategic. And as I mentioned, if you're not consolidating the right loans together, it can end up costing the borrower a lot more money and maybe even causing some financial issues. Um, so some things to think about. So consolidating parent plus loans with other loans can limit the eligibility in the income driven repayment plans. The borrower can avoid this by leaving non-parent plus loans out when they are when they do consolidate. Consolidation can change the regulations that apply to a borrower's defense application and can make a borrower ineligible for a false certification discharge. If you consolidate as all of the borrower's loans together, they will not be able to use consolidation as an avenue to get a default in the future. And as I've already mentioned, due to litigation, it may reset the borrower's income-driven repayment plan, qualifying time clock. So um, check into all those, find out, get answers to all those questions before, actually applying for that consolidation, so that exactly what's going to happen. And as I said, I'm going to mention this more than once, but never refinance or consolidate federal student loans into a private student loan because you lose all of those benefits that you can get from the federal loan. So moving on to student loan default. A loan is in default the day after a student loan payment is missed. This is or it becomes delinquent when the day after it's missed, and the loan servicer is going to notify the borrower of the missed payment. After 9 months of missed payments, then the loan is declared as default. Once it becomes default, it gets transferred to the default loan servicer, generally within a year of default. So this is where no attempt at making a payment has been made for 9 months, and no other options have been made. So some consequences of when someone does default on a student loan, it can negatively impact a borrower's credit score. It could potentially prevent them from getting more federal financial aid or any other government loans. And this could even be like FHA or USDA mortgages to purchase a home. Um, the you could lose income or benefits because of that default. To collect a defaulted loan, the government could seize tax refunds, garnish wages, offset Social Security benefits, or even sue student loan borrowers to get a judgment. And they could even charge really large collection fees. So if someone is in a situation where they're not able to make those student loan payments, applying for a deferment or a forbearance are going to be the best options for them. And even if maybe they go a month and they think, oh, I'm going to be able to catch up, and then they just can't quite catch up, then it's important to apply for those other options that are available. So collection on most federal student loans has been paused since the pandemic, but the Department of Education has restarted credit reporting and is beginning the process of restarting the collection activities. So borrowers should, start now to be able to get out of default and to avoid collections. So ways to get out of to get federal loans out of default is that consolidation process. If they haven't already consolidated, they can consolidate just one loan or many federal loans together. And they can either select to enroll in the income-driven repayment plan or make 3 consecutive reasonable and affordable payments. And then, or they can generally only consolidate a loan once to get out of default. So, as I said, it's more difficult due to pending court cases to apply for the income-driven repayment plans. The link is on the studentaid.gov website to apply for those IDRs. That wasn't the case a few months ago. So, really just like looking at the situation and kind of figuring out what to do. Some other options are loan rehabilitation, where a borrower can make 9 consecutive monthly payments based on their income to get out of default. They can only do this once, and they do need to apply for that agreement. Or they can apply for loan cancellation or payoff. Loans that are in default are eligible for most cancellation programs. So this is just, looking into that process to see if the individual is eligible for that. So I want to spend some time talking about being able to manage those student loan payments. And as I've mentioned, those private lenders, they're going to work differently than the federal, federal loan servicers. They might have some short-term repayment relief, but such as those interest-only repayments or deferments or forbearances. But you would need to talk to that private lender, or whoever's managing that. They can try to negotiate a settlement for reduced payments for interest rate, or just to pay it off in a lump sum. They could refinance or consolidate the private student loans with other lenders. That might help with a better interest rate or reduced fees. Once again, never refinance or consolidate federal loans with a private lender. Once they're refinanced, it loses access to that federal relief programs. And then they can also explore bankruptcy options. Those are, the bankruptcy is pretty serious with some other types of consequences that are, more impactful on a person's finance. If private loans do go into default, just like with federal loans, there's costly consequences with collections cost, damage to credit score and credit history, possible lawsuits or judgments or garnishment of wages and those types of funds. If a borrower has been sued, they may have defenses to the lawsuit and should be referred to a lawyer right away. And some borrowers might qualify for some free help from a legal aid agency. I would say the most important thing with any student loans and loans in general, is if the borrower knows they're not going to be able to make those payments, they need to, you know, once they realize that, to do something about it and to kind of act and just find out what their options are, and then look to see what would be the best option for them, even if it's just maybe a short-term solution until their financial situation changes. That's going to just help them out in the it'll help them out, and it'll help their financial situation in the future. All right, I'm going to spend some time talking about some tips for just paying those student loans. Um, let's see here. So, as I've mentioned, the studentaid.gov website, this is the website that where all of your federal student loan information is held. It's where you can, apply for repayments or repayment plans, change your payment plans. It's where all of your contact information, your your loan servicer information is. You can also, there's a loan simulator, so you can help, calculate what your loan payments might be. This is helpful if your income changes. You can, do some calculations to determine what would be an appropriate, like if you changed your payment. So maybe if you were able to pay a little bit more, how much faster you'd be able to pay that off. The studentaid.gov website has the same logon information for those of you who may have recently done the FAFSAs and actually applied for student loans. It's that kind of that same website and that same area there. Um, so some things to do is really just assess your financial situation. So if you're just getting started with the student loan repayment process, really just, what is your situation? What is your income? What are you projecting your income to be once your grace period is up? And, you can apply for the income-driven repayment plans and get your repayment plan set up long before your grace period is over, and that's probably the most important thing you can do. You want to be able to look at all of your expenses to see if there is, what is your current financial situation? Is there a way to make some changes in your spending and your expenses so that you have a little bit more flexibility for to be able to make your student loan payments? Um, so, looking at your income, looking at your expenses, and then just knowing what your payment is going to be. And all of that information is on either the studentaid.gov website or your loan servicer website. And long before you have to start making payments, who your loan servicer is going to be. And so then talk to the loan servicer to learn about the details of that repayment plan and what some of your options might be. Understand what your debt picture is. What is your debt to income ratio? So how much of your income, like what percentage of your income is going to pay off debts? What other debts might you have? And really just kind of make a plan and really kind of pay attention to your financial situation. And then most importantly, pay attention to any emails or mails that you receive from your loan servicer. Most likely you're gonna, unless depending on what you've opted for, you might get actual mail or emails, but make sure you read that information and don't put it off, because it can be very beneficial in helping you determine what action steps you might want to take. Let's see. So do your homework on those repayment plans. Um, Make those payments on time. Most loans, you can set up an automatic payment, and that reduces your interest rate a small fraction, which can add up over time. Look at different refinancing options, and then really just, talk to your loan servicer if you have questions or you don't understand something. So of course, with anything, student loans, there's always scams, or with this loan forgiveness, student loan payment, payoffs, that type of thing. There's always some scams. Remember that no one is going to call you and offer loan forgiveness. Um, then, and if you want to consolidate or work towards forgiveness, do not pay a fee for that. The loan servicer is not going to require that. The Department of Education is not going to require that. And so if anyone asks for a fee to be able to consolidate your loans, then know that you're not in the right place, or this is not the right person. You can always check your credit report to make sure no one has stolen your identity. The federal student aid or the studentaid.gov website is your best source of information. And so if anyone, if you get any notification that something's happened with your loan, go to that website to verify. And keep your contact information updated, and, keep your login information secure. Some other things, as you're getting started, and maybe you're this information or this slide is probably for the newly graduated or individuals who are just starting into the loan repayment process. This is just a list of some questions that the borrower should be able to answer and to keep a record of. While you are paying off this debt, it's important to pay attention to it. 10 years or 15 years seems like a long time to pay off a loan, but you know, that's the how this process and how it's set up. You can always make payments faster, and you can always pay more every month, or depending on what your financial situation is, if you can pay it off in a lump sum, that's even better, and then you're completely done with it. But for federal loans, always know what type of loans you have, kind of what the status of the loan is, if it's in default, repayment, forbearance, who has the loan, who's the loan servicer, what type of repayment plan you're in, and then, identify your repayment goals. Do you want to just really focus on paying off those loans, and then, be done with them faster, or do you want to just, take your time with the repayment plan? And then the same questions with those private loans, and just know that you're gonna, um, need to know that information. And this would be the same thing you'd want to know for any type of a loan. Like if you have a mortgage or a car payment or, anything, like that. Um, this is information I've kind of gone over already. Um, and specifically, like your loan status, you could be in repayment, in a grace period, deferment or forbearance, could be delinquent, could be in default, or it could be entered into a judgment. And so all of those, just always knowing what your status is. When you log on to the studentaid.gov website, this is what the dashboard looks like for your loan. This is information, it tells you what your loan types are, what your outstanding balance is, who your loan servicer is, and what your payment is, how many payments you've made, and that type of thing. So your loan servicer and the studentaid.gov are gonna, like, the information is gonna be collaborative. So you're going to know the information at both of those locations. It's encouraged for borrowers to take a screenshot of this dashboard or this page so that they know where their kind of what their financial situation is, and then just kind of be able to keep track of that information. And then for private student loans, you can find all your information about federal student loans on the studentaid.gov website. Private student loans, you can't find it there. And so you need to go to the lender to find that information, look at school records if you can't remember who the lender is, or even go to your credit report at annualcreditreport.com. All of those loans that you have, student or private or federal, are going to be listed there. And so sometimes with those private student loans, you could have a variety of private lenders from the private student loans, depending on like when you you could have gone to a different lender each year that you were in college, and so you could have 4 different private student loan lenders, and so you want to be able to make sure you have all that information together. Let's see. And so I think I've covered this information too, about loan forgiveness, cancellation, and discharge. There is some cases where, you can discharge. These are kind of some different situations. And since we're kind of running out of time, I'm not going to go into those into detail, but, some things like if your school was closed, it's, and the borrower didn't complete their program, they could possibly have their loans discharged. If there is, identity theft situation, if there's a cancellation of the income driven repayment plan, I've talked about the public service loan forgiveness. And so there are some different situations where individuals can get those loans discharged. Um, so as we wrap things up here, some resources I wanted to share. The National Consumer Law Center has the Student Loan Toolkit. That's the document that I sent out today with the reminder of the webinar. It has a lot of great information, and it's a good resource in order to just keep track of your loan information. It has fillable pages so that you can kind of keep all of your loan information in one place. And then the Student Loan Borrower Assistance website has the latest news on student loans, and it's a good place to find answers to common questions. I used that website today to make sure I was updated on kind of the what was happening at the federal level with the student loans. And then the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau also has information about paying for college and then those student loans. So, whew, made it to the end here. Here's the QR code for the evaluation. This is time to ask any questions and, and I can answer those questions for you while you're doing that evaluation. So why do student loan servicers change? Yeah, that's a really good question, Nicole. In some cases, um, the say like Great Lakes actually like they changed their name to a different servicer, or they close, and so then they kind of move your file over to another organization. I've never heard of Solon for a student loan servicer, but um, there's a number of reasons. I know there were some servicers that after COVID, they just closed and they weren't active anymore. So any of those loans just got switched over to a new company or a new servicer. But you raised a good point. That can happen. And the only way you know it is by paying attention to what's happening with your loan. There's usually going to be notifications on your loan servicer website. And so just really paying attention to what's happening. This isn't one of those things where you can kind of set it and forget it. You want to make sure that you are just, really paying attention to you know, all the payments that you're making, to any notifications they have, any changes that might happen with that. A nice benefit, since taxes are due today. I hope you guys all got your taxes done. But there is a credit for student loan interest that you may have paid throughout the year. So there's usually a tax document that you'll receive from your loan servicer. And depending on the amount that you paid, it can make a difference in reducing your tax liability. So that's for the federal student loans. I don't believe that's the case. Well, maybe I'm not sure about for private student loans, but I know for federal student loans. So, does anybody have any more questions about student loans? All right, so this is our last like official fireside chat, but I've been promoting our bonus fireside chat that's happening next week. That's talking about Medicaid. I've sent out information about registration, but you can just go to our SDSU Extension website. Events page to be able to register, and it's just going to go over information about really what is Medicaid, what are the resources available, and really why should people know about Medicaid and then Medicaid expansion. So it's going to be conducted by a navigator from the Community Health Organization, CHAD, which I always forget exactly what CHAD stands for, but anyway, we'll learn about that next week. So I always have to look it up. But we have another question here. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up? I really appreciate your interest in attending these fireside chat programs. This is something that I really enjoy doing, and we'll probably continue with that.